And Sasha, do you have plans on going back
Yeah, probably next month.
next month?
I have a kind of few stories already lining up. And the book that I'll talk about is printing in Ukraine. So we're gonna uh, yeah, we're gonna print in Lviv. It
Wow.
really depends on how the situation will be at that point because there's a big chance of Russians targeting infrastructure again, the electrical infrastructure. So
Yeah.
it's possible that there will be outages again. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
And is that a solo book, Sash?
Yeah,
Wow, great. So you have to tell us all about it. Um,
I
and,
will. I will. Yeah.
yeah, and I'll ask you again, once we get started. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, and of course, when you're ready, when do you think you're printing?
It's supposed to start beginning of November.
And when do you plan or project that you'll have it in your hands as a finished book?
End of November. Yeah, so we're trying to get it we're trying to get it out so it can be shipped for Christmas.
Okay. Yeah, you have
Yeah.
once it's complete, you have to come back and we'll talk about the book.
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to. I'm presenting a few slides about the book as well.
Great. Okay. Good. Yeah. Yeah, and you could put in the chat room, your website. So, as we mentioned, the book, people
Hmm.
where they can go and get it. We'll have it up on YouTube and on and on and on.
Yeah. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Where are you guys viewing from?
Tucson, Arizona.
Mm.
Dallas, Texas.
Beautiful day in the old Pueblo, as they say. Nice and warm and windy today.
And very red and yellow.
Um, we got green.
I've
I'm in
never
New
been to
York
It's
Arizona.
and I'm looking at the most beautiful sunset
Yeah, it's
Where
yeah.
gorgeous.
about?
right out my window.
Yeah,
Oh
Where's
wow. Yeah.
she's in New
where's the
York.
window face?
She's
I'm in Great Neck, New York.
Oh, nice. I have been to Great Neck.
I
You
love
like it?
Great Neck.
Yeah, of
Hey,
course.
Susan. Thanks for coming in.
Beautiful town, Great Neck.
It was. It's sort of sliding down
Oh
It's
no.
Florida, huh?
COVID.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, me too. I live here. I don't have a supermarket.
Yeah.
Well, there's always Little Neck.
We find our way.
You still have an Ebbingers there?
In Great Neck? No, that's Brooklyn.
Ah, okay. Never made it over there, huh?
I love the image on the screen, by the way. Boy, that is really an amazing sight.
Susan, Steve, say Stephen. Yeah, we're opening up with that image.
Unbelievable.
Um, we'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll turn it over to you, Sash.
That sounds good.
Yeah, that's a little bit more light, Jamie. Before you were in the dark.
Muted, Jamie. No. There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay. I was in the dark there for a minute.
got the other one. Right. So are you ready, Sash?
I'm ready.
Okay. You have your Racina. Is it Racina? Uzo. So tonight we have Sasha Maslov, who is actually in Greece, seeing his mom, which is always sort of charming, and she's probably very happy to have her boy with her, like all moms are with their kids. And this is the second time he'll be presenting with us, and we're thrilled to have him. We have one more presentation for tomorrow night, which is with Heathcliff O'Malley. So I hope everyone can come in tomorrow night. But right now, it's all yours, Sasha. Take over. Tell us where you've been, what's going on.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you for continuing to highlight what's going on in Ukraine. It's very important, as of course everybody's probably tired of the war and hearing about it. But unfortunately, it's still going on, and hundreds of people dying every day. It's a tremendous tragedy. And thank you for having me. So I just wanted to talk with you guys and show some of the work that I've been doing for past few months. I live in New York, or lived in New York for the most part of my life before the full-scale invasion. And my work was mostly in portraiture. With the war, I started working a little bit more in photojournalism, but I kind of have a passion for portraits and passion for storytelling via portraiture. So I try to kind of implement that in a lot of the stories that I'm doing. And I'll start with last winter. When it was becoming clear that the Russians are targeting civilian infrastructure, and specifically energy infrastructure, to kind of turn the lights off in an entire country. Partially, it was done to cripple the country, and partially was done to demoralize people, and make them more tired and willing to give up. It kind of played an opposite effect on Ukrainians, and Ukrainians became even more resilient and even more passionate to fight. Kind of beginning of the winter was anticipation of a dark and cold few months. People were kind of gearing up for that. Started to buy generators, buy candles, prepare warmer clothing, prepare to kind of stay extended amount of time in their apartments or houses without lights. And on the military side, the air defense system, of course, was preparing for more and more massive strikes. And besides the regular anti-air systems that we hear about, like Patriots, which were at that point, I don't think they were there yet. There were a lot of units that are mobile, and they were hunting specifically the Shahed drones, the Iranian made drones, that were kind of swarming the cities and attacking the plants all around the country. And this was a story about one of those units. So it's just a regular truck with the machine gun mounted on the trunk, to basically to shoot down the drones. And those mobile units are kind of all over larger cities and the smaller cities, or objects that were targeted. And those drones were usually flying fairly low, so it was possible to to shoot them down with the simple systems like that. Also
And
interesting.
Sasha, is that, do they notice the drones through technology or by eyeballing them?
By eyesight, but also it's a very interesting situation with the air defense in general. So the country has the kind of the official siren type alarms that are going off in the cities. They're sending in notifications on your cell phone. You can hear it on the radio, et cetera, et cetera. But there's also semi-official or fully unofficial Telegram channels that are basically telling you specifically what kind of drones or what kind of rockets are flying towards a specific city or a village or town. And those Telegram channels are mostly curated by the air defense guys. So it's the people who are sitting in front of a screen of a radar, and they're basically kind of volunteering to do this job of notifying people. So this was a story about the like one of these units and other systems. Like for example, this is a old Soviet Maxim gun installed on one of the rooftops in Kiev, where there's a big projector to kind of spot a drone and then shoot it down with this 50s machine gun. Sometimes Russians did succeed with turning off the lights in the entire country. There was one full blackout for entire Ukraine, and cities are just completely dark, of course, at that time. So this was a story for Wall Street Journal about this this time. This is Kiev during one of these blackouts. And I kind of chose my beat for the winter with the darkness and the coldness. I realized it's going to be a big story, and it was also something interesting for me. So I started looking for for stories I could do. And this is a series it's titled "The Darkest Winter." It was portraits of regular, ordinary Ukrainians and how they're coping and finding ways to survive the winter. This is a portrait of a student named Sonia. She was just doing her homework when she ran out of batteries for her laptop and a phone with just an old notepad and a candle. This was a portrait of a guy named Evgeny in his apartment, which is located in a neighborhood of Saltivka, North Saltivka, in Kharkiv, which is my hometown. And this specific neighborhood was facing the outskirts of the city, which when the Russians were attacking, was kind of like a wall in front of the city, and this is a view out of his apartment. So as you see, all the apartment buildings are just completely blacked out from shelling. Still at that time, it was end of November, beginning of December, if I'm not mistaken. And as you see, like some construction has started already, but overall it's just completely bombed out neighborhood where some are returning, like Evgeny, for example, but the overall situation was still very dire at that time, and he didn't have gas, he didn't have cooking gas, he didn't have electricity by times. There's no water supply in the apartment, but he kind of still found ways to survive and to live with his two little dogs, which are very angry at each other when I was photographing them. And as you see, one of them barking at another. This is a portrait of Oksana and her daughter Yarinka in Lviv region. They had a lot of outages as well, and as kind of like a very upsetting story, or part of the story about these two is that Yarinka, the girl, she had a condition where she needed an inhalator, and when the outage started, the inhalator was connected to the power supply, so they couldn't run that inhalator. They ran it through a generator first, but it was very loud, and then they were able to find a battery powered one. So just kind of like another little detail how people are finding ways to survive, and just keep going. And this is a portrait of from the same series of an artist, sculptor Denis Shumansky in Lviv. He also bought a generator for his studio, but then didn't like the noise, so he decided to just continue working with the headlamp when the outages started. And that's kind of a very defining quality of Ukrainians. Just the adaptation to these horrors and just finding ways to cope and to survive and to do their work, whatever it is. And of course, the epicenter of the attacks became the power stations, the transformer stations, and unique thing about Ukraine and other post-Soviet countries is these 700 megawatt generators, 700 megawatt transformer stations that are not being used anywhere else in the world. They're very powerful, they're massive, but they're very hard to replace. And even the 300 megawatt transformer station is very difficult to replace because it's just a massive thing. They're usually being brought in by train, then a special tracks laid on the transformer station, and they're being wheeled on those tracks to the location, and then left on the tracks, and the tracks are being basically taken apart, and they continue to sit in their specific spot. So this is one of those 700 megawatt transformers that are completely destroyed by a direct hit. And
So Sasha, on an assignment like this, are they asking you, whatever the publication is, are they asking you to get portraits of people within the environment? Is that sort of, the brief? We want to see the people who run these, different operations, or living here, or just part of the ongoing society?
Well, it really depends on the story, but in this specific case, yes. So because I started working on a few energy stories and everything that's connected to blackouts, I started pitching different angles to different publications that I thought would be interesting stories. So this story was shot for the New Yorker, for example, and this was kind of based on portraits kind of in different parts of the country, but also of course on the general situation. So I would do just more typical reporting and then portraits as well. But my shtick is portraits, so I usually pitch stories based on portraiture. And this is one of the missiles that that got shot down near a station. You can see it, like just a very menacing look of this evil machine. It's just another portrait of an energy worker in one of the buildings that was destroyed on the power station. If I'm not mistaken, this is Kharkiv region. another fire station, power station that was targeted in Kyiv region. This is the director of the specific station, standing in the office building where he works, and they continue to go to work in that building. It's just kind of like became again part of daily life for a lot of these guys who, of course, never banked on being on a target for these attacks, but they had to continue come to work, and a lot of them felt very very important what they're doing now more than any other time. So I felt just a lot of work pride for what they were doing at this difficult time for the country. This was a station. This was a power station that produced power. It's a coal power station in the western Ukraine that was hit directly. And this is one of the reactors that was hit. This was done a few days after the strike, but you can see it's still smoldering. And all the other reactors were still working, and they were trying to salvage parts from this one, try to kind of like clean up the mess, and it's also very symbolic image of what the country looks like when there's something on fire, people are putting out the fire while trying to maintain the functionability of whatever's can be still done around.
It seems to us that the Ukrainians don't miss a beat. Like nothing can really, like they'll take the punch, another punch, and another punch, and they just keep on coming back.
Yeah, that's overall feeling. Of course, it's extremely devastating, and there's a loss at every step of the way. But people feel inspired to continue working, whatever their position is, and this is another example of this. This is just two workers kind of finding scrap, whatever they can find. This was a completely bombed out power station, Kharkiv region, just to kind of start putting things together for repairs.
They don't spend much time feeling bad for themselves.
No, there's no time for that.
Yeah.
So as kind of the winter became spring, there was a little breathing time, short window of relief, and in May, the strikes started happening again, and the strikes were now targeting larger cities. And there was a series of attacks on Kyiv, especially with larger amount of Shahed drones. At that time, Russia started producing Shaheds in Russia, and there was a story about how Kyiv residents are coping with this new attack because throughout the winter, the biggest burden was on the energy infrastructure, and the cities kind of like Kyiv were not targeted as much. And then again in May, it started again. And this was a story about families, especially mothers, how they're protecting themselves during these strikes. So this was another portrait story. And this was done on one night. We would go spend some time with these families and see what they do. Most of the time, people would either go to shelters, or more commonly, they would find shelter within their apartment behind 2 or 3 walls, so it's safer. And bathrooms are kind of one of the most common places where to hide, because they're usually kind of separated by 2 or 3 walls from the windows. For example, on this night, he would spend the night with this family, and then there was another strike, and we found out where it was and headed there with the team from Washington Post, and there was a woman, wife of this man Evgeny, who was killed on the way to the shelter. So the alarm sounded, and she grabbed her daughter and ran to the shelter. But the shelter was closed. So the person who was responsible for opening the door to the shelter, for some reason, did not react in time, and she got killed in front of the shelter. Her daughter survived. And Evgeny, this man, he was behind her just a few steps. So we spoke with him. He was devastated, of course. And in Kiev too, it's these attacks happen, and then we did this reporting, and then we went back to our apartments or our houses or hotels, and just 15-20 minutes car ride. When I was getting back to my apartment, people were getting coffee, and morning commuters were starting to travel to work, and that's just not it's not in a different city even, or a village. It's happening in the same city, so it's very surreal when you see that. And then from this is we did a follow-up story with
Sash, give us a sense of the team that you're traveling with. Do you have a fixer? Is there 4 of you, 6 of you? How long do you stay together with the folks that you're shooting with?
Well, I'm usually we're based in, well, depending on the team I'm working with. Since I'm a freelancer, I work with a few teams. Washington Post is one of the teams I work with a lot. They're usually a reporter, producer, a fixer. Depending where we're going, there's a security advisor and a driver. If it's a frontline story, there's usually another vehicle in case something happens. So it really depends on where we're working and yeah, where we're going basically. This was a follow-up story to this particular strike. This is near where Evgeny's wife was killed next day. That's reported over there, and then the fact that the shelter was closed kind of triggered a huge chain reaction, where the Kiev city government started checking shelters, if they're open, if they're closed. And we did a story on that kind of followed the city officials, and it was checking those shelters and figuring out why that specific shelter was closed. The guy who was responsible for opening the shelter, I'm not sure if he did go to prison or not, but he definitely was detained, and there was a court hearing. I'm not sure if he is released or if the court proceedings are still happening, but I think he was sentenced.
Yeah, so I mean, there's still functioning courts and things going on like that. I mean, they have the wherewithal to still do that, or is that sort of a military thing that happens rather quickly?
No, it's not a military. The military court only
Spies.
works, prosecutes military personnel. The country is functional. There's still buses and trains arriving on time. Everything is working. Airports are not working, obviously, and there's a lot of limitations, curfews, et cetera. But one of the most defining moments and things about this war is people have chosen to live rather than survive. And even though there's a war going on, the country is functioning, and everybody is involved in some capacity, because at this point, most people have either somebody they know that's been wounded or killed, and of course it's felt it's very widely on the population, but most things are still working, of course.
And do you attribute that with the war really starting with the takeover of Crimea, that the people have been used to this for so long that this is just the way we live at the moment?
Well, I mean, from the takeover of Crimea to now, there's a big gap. Where the war's been happening since 2014,
Right.
and that really became kind of normality. But with a full-scale invasion, the scale of the war is so much larger, and it's felt throughout the country much more. Just because of the scale of it, and the front line is just so long. The fighting is so intense. Plus, there's a rocket strikes all over the country. So it can be compared with those times where they were relatively unattached to to the most of the country. Of course, it was a big event. But it can be compared what is
No, no,
happening now.
I don't mean to compare it. I mean more of like you say, the buses are running, the trains are running, everyone is going about their normal life, which is really, I mean, it's unbelievable. You know, to hear you say that, you know, it's all running. They want to live a normal life. It's, you know, it's a testament to the Ukrainian population. It's just, you know, how do you get used to that? It's just amazing.
It's not a good thing to get used to. It's not
No, I know.
normal. It has a toll on people, but at the same time, it's really incredible. People are much kinder to each other. Um, People help each other. You can stop somebody on the street and ask for help. It's something that really united the country, and it's something that just completely mobilized people. Whatever they do, everybody's helping in some capacity.
Yeah, beautiful.
And this is just another kind of example of that. So this was during another rocket strike on Kiev. I came down to the subway. There was a ballistic threat. So the ballistic missiles are very difficult to intercept. So I decided to go down to the subway, and I saw these two ladies and mother. So this is a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter. So this is three generations of women that were just sheltering and waiting for the air raid alarm to be over. So I asked to take their photo, and as you can see, like, some people are sheltering, some people are just walking around, and just going around just on their business. So this is kind of like the good illustration of this mood that I just talked about. And at the same time, life goes on in the streets, and if you look at this image, you probably wouldn't think that it's a country at war, right? But a lot of when you're like riding in a taxi cab and you're looking out the window, people are sitting in cafes, walking around, doing their thing. But there's just a huge uniting moment, because everybody's talking about the same thing, about the war. And events like this, this is just a concert where musicians were fundraising for I don't remember for whom, but every time you go to a concert, every time you go to a cafe, you'll see a QR code to donate to this charity or this charity or to the specific battalion, because all the military units are also fundraising for their specific needs. Somebody needs night vision goggles, somebody needs new tires for a truck, somebody needs a new truck, and the government is just not able to supply all that, especially smaller things. So there's so many people who has relatives, friends, close ones, just wants to help, and everybody's just trying to do something. And this is just another illustration of that, but this is also kind of like a funny thing, just like in the center of Kiev, there was a big repair started, and actually the Kiev residents protested against any kind of public works or infrastructure enhancement, because they thought it's a waste of money when there's money needed on the front line. So this was like one of the hugely criticized move by the Kyiv city government to like just start repairing cobblestone when there's a war going on.
Yeah. So now, Sasha, do you think this is done for morale for the people? Like for
the street repair?
the mother, yeah, to do something like this. I mean, there's a lot of different sides to this, but it's got to be. I mean, I'm looking at, and this is the first image I think we've seen of work like this going on, like really rebuilding that. But that has to be, on so many levels. People who live, a quarter of a mile away or coming into town, seeing that we're building back already. That's got to be, from a morale standpoint, a wonderful thing to see. And I understand on the other side, why are we spending all this money on this? But, what's your feeling when you see this, when you come upon something like this? What do you think?
Well, there's two sides to this. On one thing, potentially maybe government wants to show that we're still improving our city. On another side, somebody looks at this, especially somebody who knows what's happening on the front line. Obviously the images you see are very different, and rightfully thinks that it's a waste of money when these money could be rerouted towards actual help to the people that need it. So it's up for interpretation. To me personally, it does seem wasteful. Yeah.
I mean, I look at this and to me that reads "fuck you, Putin."
Well, in a way it does, but at the same time, about the spending in any country, there's going to be somebody who's going to say the money could be spent on something better than this, and it's always right.
Yes, I think both sides are right.
Yeah. And strikes at the same time, of course, continue all over the city. This was in Kryvyi Rih. This man jumped out of second floor after the rocket strike, and his apartment was on fire. So yeah, he and his wife jumped out of the second floor. He was unharmed, but she went to the hospital. Both survived, thankfully. But at the same time, that was already June, and there was a either detonation or strike on Kakhovka Dam, and then Russians most likely they blew it up, as the satellite images show, which flooded Kherson, a city that really suffered quite a bit. It was first under occupation for, if I'm not mistaken, about 6 or 7 months. And there was liberation of Kherson in November of last year, which brought out people to the streets where everybody was very jovial and celebratory. But then Russians immediately after retreating, they started shelling the city quite a bit. And then after they blew up the Kakhovka Dam, it flooded the city and of course destroyed so much, as well as done really irreparable harm to environment around. And this is just an image of this was shot for Die Zeit, German publication, of a man. His house was just around the corner, and he made this flotation device out of foam core, and was just commuting towards a dry land to get some supplies. Just another image from Kherson. As you see, it's just devastating. and these three women decided to stay in their apartments, even though there were people coming to evacuate them, but they decided to stay. And when we were passing in our little inflatable boat, they waved at us, and so we decided we got to like swam towards them and then interviewed them and talked with them. And as for rebuilding, there's really a large effort of rebuilding. The government started rebuilding, but as with anything else, a brunt or at least a lot of work is done by volunteers. So this is just one group of volunteers called District Number One. And it's kind of like, typical hipster guys you see kind of in Williamsburg. They all have their own businesses, but they started this foundation called District Number One, that finds specific families that in most need, and rebuilding their houses. This one was being rebuilt from scratch. This is in Irpin, in Kiev region, one of the occupied town, kind of on the outskirts of Kiev, and they were rebuilding their house.
And what are you shooting with, Sash?
I'm shooting with GFX 100. It's a medium format camera, and a Leica.
And how do you,
Depends on the
I
timing.
mean, of course, everything is natural light.
No, I light my photos when I get a chance with the portraits. This is lit, so I carry a couple of strobes with me, depending on assignments, depending where it is. Of course, if I'm in an area where it's just shit exploding everywhere, I'm not gonna start setting up my umbrella. But if there's a chance to light stuff and to spend some time with people, I prefer to do that. And kind of shifting towards frontline, of course, it's just a very different situation, very different stories coming out from there. The fighting is very aggressive. It doesn't really get any quieter with time. It's only getting worse and worse. And of course, people are very tired who are in the front lines. There's been units that's been there for over a year. Without rotation, without much break. You can feel it, but people are still very, very resilient. This is one of the National Guardsmen photographed for a story about fighting in Kremenna Forest. That's on the Eastern Front, and it's brutal fighting. It's kind of like very World War II-esque because it's happening in the forest. There's large stretches of forests that are just unmonitored because it's very hard to see from drones and surveillance. So there's actual groups of soldiers that are coming there and finding each other and trying to eliminate each other. He's the commander of one of those units. We spent some time with them. This was a story done for the Washington Post, and it was a very interesting experience, kind of just to see the morale and drive of these young soldiers. And of course, the bombing doesn't stop on the front line. Especially, this is a bombing of a Ria pizzeria that you probably heard about, where a lot of journalists and aid workers were gathering. And I was there working 2 days prior to this bombing, and I spent there an entire day just working on images. And 2 days later, it was bombed. And a few photographers and some other people that I know were there. Thankfully, nobody who I knew have died, but it was kind of one of those moments when you realize how close death can get to you. This is also images from that strike. On the right, you see just two a couple. It's the grandparents of one of the workers of this restaurant that was under rubble. This was the day after the strike, and their granddaughter was somewhere under, and then she was found dead. We found out, and then some people just waiting to see if their friends are found under the rubble too, and a photo of a woman across the street of just carrying a window that was shattered. A lot of stories that you've been seeing, and then some of them I've been working on, is just the toll on soldiers and on population. More and more amputees coming. You see them on the streets. You see them everywhere. Just becoming part of society in Ukraine. Of course, a lot of soldiers are losing limbs. This is photo from Superhumans clinic in Lviv, where they're getting prosthetics. This was also done for the Washington Post.
So, Sasha, do most of these story ideas come from the publications, or do you pitch? I have an idea. Like, how is that working now?
I would
We've seen
say
so
lately
much.
it's mostly I'm getting assignments, but I do pitch stories and continue to pitch stories, especially if there's a kind of a quieter moment and I have time to kind of gather information and try to contact people. So it depends, but lately it's been mostly assignments. And just for me, like for many other Ukrainians, it's the war is very personal, in a sense that there's people that that are in front line, and this is, for example, my friend and a colleague Bogdan, who 2.5 years ago. He was working as a gallery assistant in a gallery that I was exhibiting in Kiev. And then he volunteered for the army in the beginning of full-scale invasion. He actually is a religious person. He wanted to be a military priest, Capellan. But then there was a need for infantry, so he decided to go to infantry. He got wounded, thankfully survived, and then we met in Kiev and in a hospital where he was. And of course, the images from clinics in Western Ukraine or in the hospitals are much more clean, so to speak, and picturesque. But towards the front line, it's blood and guts and dirt. It's unpleasant. This is Yuri Kuznetsov. He is a doctor in Izium. Izium was occupied in the beginning of full-scale invasion, and in March, he was one of the doctors who went into work, and he's the surgeon. And he never left the hospital until September, when the city was liberated. He was basically the only doctor left in the city that was occupied. So he lived in a hospital. He with a few nurses. He set up a clinic in the basement. And this was shot for this book I'm working on, which I'll tell a little bit more later. This few more images from the city of Izium, and the first image is actually from Toretsk, but the rest is from Izium. And as you can see in this third image, for example, there's a flower bed, and in the background there's a burned out building of the city council, and this woman is just spraying the lawn with water, and there's a flower beds, kind of like these kind of conflicting realities that you see all over, closer to the front line, or in some cities in Ukraine where there's a lot of destruction.
Yeah. So Sasha,
Um,
I mean, as you mentioned that these two conflicts of what's going on, can you speak to what you're feeling as it relates to the people that you're shooting, the mental stress that they're under, and yourself?
Of course, everybody's undergoing a mental stress one way or another. And a lot of people finding ways to cope. A lot of people finding reason for them being there. Because most people can can leave, at least leave, the areas that they're in, if it's immediate danger. But most people are finding reasons for them being there. Coming, starting from a simple, this is my home and I belong here, and it could be multitude of reasons. I should be here to, start rebuilding. I should be here for my kids. I should be here for my parents, etc., etc. This is, for example, a museum worker in the city of Izium, who's now coming to work to like to do some work that she can. During the occupation, she was coming into work basically to try to maintain the building and also hiding artifacts from Russians. So it's a small city. It's in Kharkiv region. So a museum is very modest, and it's mostly just on local history, etc. But they do have one prized artifact, which is a 17th century Bible. So she made it her mission to hide this Bible in case Russians would loot the museum, like they've done in Kherson, for example. When they were leaving, they took all the artifacts from Kherson museum, and she's holding this lavender bouquet that she used kind of to detract vermins and to detract insects, because the building got damaged from the bombing. So the water was coming in, so she was trying to just kind of lay things around to kind of like so that was her work for the time of occupation. And this is just one small example of like these kind of like everyday heroism that just people are taking upon themselves to protect what they think is important.
Beautiful.
This is another example of that. So this is a mail carrier, Halina, from a town of Guleipole. This is in Zaporizhia region, very close to the front line, to the southern front line. So there's a handful of people living in the town, and the post office, like most buildings, is bombed out at this time. So she's coming on her mail route from Zaporizhia, which is like a center of the region, to bring those people who are still remaining either their pensions or mail or something else. Or so, like the Ukrainian mail is the official mail carrier of Ukraine. So a lot of organization work through it, like UNCHR or other organizations. So they should be delivering humanitarian aid to people as well, in a place where these organizations then go to because of their security protocol. It's too close to the front line for them to go to there. So this is just another example of like this self-sacrifice and just duty that people feel to continue doing their work and their task, however small or large it is. Just a few images from an embed with the Special Forces team of SBU. SBU is kind of like a similar to, I guess, FBI in the United States, and they have this anti-terrorist task force called Team A or Alpha. And of course, now all the fighting units are involved on the front line. And we spent with the Washington Post team a few days with them on their different units, kind of along the front line. They're doing mostly smaller missions, but very precise and just targeted different tasks. There you have snipers, they have mortars, they have even artillery, they have drone units, like one of these. And of course, drone warfare is one of the most defining characteristics of this war. There's a lot of drones flying in Ukraine. A huge volunteer and kind of entrepreneurial development of the drones has taken place, where larger and smaller volunteer organizations are taking upon themselves to produce these drones. So this was just a few images from that embed and work with this team, also for the Washington Post. And just a few portraits from this upcoming book. So the book is going to be called Saints, and it's a portrait book. It's stories of people who have made a large sacrifice in their life in order to either fight or help or save or rescue or just do their work, do whatever they do to help other people. And this is Yara Chornohus. She's a poetess who's been at war for a long time, long before the full-scale invasion, and she was a medic. She was a volunteer medic who then became a Marine, which is a very difficult task for a female fighter, just because of the physical requirements. And she's one of I'm not sure how many, but she's one of the very few female Marines in Ukraine. She also lost her partner, who was a soldier. Is Victor Pilipenko. He's a military medic, and he's also a LGBTQ activist in the Ukrainian military. And another interesting thing that I've noticed is just a lot of people who are fighting now, or who are doing volunteering tasks, other incredible things during this war. They're doing it, of course, in the moment for the victory of their country, but they're also doing it for kind of laying the foundation for the future of their country, and already defending the values that they want to see in the future post-war Ukraine, like Victor.
Yeah. So Sasha, speak a little bit more what you're hearing or what you're feeling about the future of Ukraine with young people.
People are very optimistic. Of course, it's optimism through understanding that the darkest time have not arrived yet, and it's just the war is going to continue for a long time. But the overwhelming feeling is it's worth it, because if we don't have our country, we don't have anywhere to defend our values.
But how are the values changing? How do you think the social mores will change after the war?
It's a good question. It's definitely going to be a very turbulent time. I can't answer it. I'm hoping for the best, but there's going to be a lot of issues. Of course, the army now, if we take all the volunteer units, all the police, everybody's fighting. It's probably close to 1 million strong. So people are going to have to be coming back and readapting into the society. The different thing about this war compared to what we've seen with American wars, for example, People are fighting for their home in their home. So, it's a train ride away from their town or village, and they know what they're fighting for. They know their family is nearby. They're going to be coming back to their family. That's, in the same environment, who, for the most importantly, will understand what they're going through and what they went through and why they went through this. So they're not going to be coming back to society that has no idea what's happening somewhere overseas. So, I think that's a big positive. But of course, there's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of destruction. There's going to be a lot of things to fix. And there's going to be issues coming out from these things. And this is a portrait of a fighter pilot with the call sign Juice, who recently was killed in an accident, a training accident. He was also shot for this book. It's an incredible person, very active, not only just as a fighter, but he was one of the instrumental advocates. He got an American education in American pilot school. He was one of the activists for the F-16 transfer to Ukraine. So this was a big loss for Ukraine. And another aspect of this war, and for the Ukrainians are kind of building the pantheon of the heroes in the real time because of the just how quickly we are able to receive information, how quickly we're able to learn stories. We're kind of very quickly can find out who are the people who are on the forefront of these things. And it's like there's just so many names that are we're seeing now, who are, the street names are going to be named after in the future, with monuments we're going to see on the streets in Ukraine. And this is certainly one of those people. And this is the book itself. It's going to come out in November. And it's just going to be kind of a collection of portraits in the stories of folks that I mentioned or similar. And that's the end of my chat.
So tell us more about the book. How many pages? What's the size? Who wrote it with you? All you published.
So we're publishing in Ukraine. We're doing it with partnership with Saint Javelin. It's a Canadian initiative that kind of I'm always having difficulties explaining exactly what they do, because they started with making memes on the internet about the war, and started making stickers. Christian Boris is a founder who started with just readapting kind of like a Maria holding a baby, with Maria holding Kalashnikov, which was I forgot the illustrator's name, but it was kind of like a famous image to Maria holding a javelin. And I started selling those stickers for donations. And the company got bigger and bigger. They've already raised millions of dollars, and helped a lot of people. So we're doing that in partnership with them. And then with the Kiev publication house called Osnova, which I worked with before, we wanted to do everything in Ukraine. Of course, it's a little bit more difficult, but we wanted to do this book in Ukraine. It's going to be close to 300 pages. The format, I don't remember exactly, but it's, I think, about 11 by 10 by 13 or 11 by 14, something like that. Yeah.
And how'd you come up with the name?
It's a good question.
That was Jamie.
I understand that this name can mean so many different things for a lot of people, but it's just such an all-consuming name that I thought it would be appropriate to use for these people, because of course these people are not saints uh, uh, in a biblical sense, right? They're saints in a moment because their actions have led to saving somebody, either directly or indirectly. There's going to be military personnel there who have killed other people, but by killing somebody else, unfortunately, as the war works like that, they have saved other people. There are people who have given up their lives, their businesses, their everything to go and to dedicate their work to fight for their country. It's still, for me, if this is not sainthood, I don't know what is.
And so the book should be finished by the end of November. That's the hope.
Well, it's finished already. It's right now in layout, and
Yeah.
texts are being translated, edited, all that good stuff. The
Are you doing
writer.
pre-ordering yet? Can we
What's
pre-order?
that? No,
we-
the pre-order is right now. We did a pre-order, but right now the pre-order is closed. We're signing the books for the folks that are pre-ordered it, and then the orders are gonna open closer to November. Yeah.
Okay, November. And we can get this all on your website. You'll have
Sure.
information?
Yeah. I have. You don't see my slides anymore, right? Yeah.
No, we'll just see you.
Okay. Well, that's okay.
Yeah, someone put in the link there in the chat room.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, all right. So when are you going back? What's the future holding for you now? And if anyone has any questions, just raise your hand and we'll open it up so anyone can ask a question. What's your immediate plans now?
I'm just gonna take a little rest. I've been working for about 4 months, so I'm just gonna take a little rest, go back to New York, and then probably come back to Ukraine end of October, beginning of November.
Okay, that's a short rest. I mean, we're almost in October now. My God.
Yeah.
And how much time have you actually spent there? Since
Since the beginning of full-scale invasion, I don't know, probably a little bit more than half of whatever it was.
really, wow.
Yeah.
And how are you doing? How do you check on yourself with your mental health, other than your mom telling you you're the cutest boy in the world? What what do you do for yourself?
Well, I mean, therapy helps, certainly. I can recommend it to anyone. Just I don't know. It's you get used to these things, of course. I feel it's important what journalists are doing. So I feel this is needed. You just try to take care of yourself, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. It's obviously it's crucial. I mean, your own well-being, right? So yeah, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you doing this. I know it's in the middle of the night now for you in Greece, and so that's really terrific that you would come in and do this for us. So thank you, and everyone in the chat room is loving your work, and you have a standing offer to when the book is published. Let me know, and we'll promote it. Through our network, in any and every way that we can. So that.
Thank you, Frank. Thank
Yeah,
you again for continuing to highlight. It's important not to forget that the war is happening.
No, we won't. So Sasha, you have the last word to send us off. And just so everyone knows, tomorrow night we have Heathcliff O'Malley, who we recorded earlier. We'll have him tomorrow night. But Sasha, please, send us off for the evening.
Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you tuning in and listening to me. Thank you very much.
Great. Okay. Thank you, and be safe and be in touch, Sasha.